and welcome to A Good Walk Spoiled Adventures in Golf with your host, Scott Ponywaz, also known as Pony Golf. A Good Walk Spoiled is part of the Millions.co and Golfer Gang networks. Thank you for tuning in. Let's swing into this week's episode.
Hello and welcome to another episode of A Good Walk Spoiled. I'm excited today to have Jeff Hartman on our episode. Those of you may know him from his Fairways and Dreams podcast. And I do know that he has some other non-golf related podcasts you might have crossed paths with as well. So I'll let him touch on those. He also helps run the Golfer Gang network, which those of you that have been listening have heard me plugging a little bit, and it usually is in the intros and the outros of each episode. So we're going to get into a little bit more about Golfer Gang Network and some of those a little later in the episode. But, want to thank Jeff for being on today, and welcome, Jeff.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's always great to be on the other end of these podcasts. I'm so used to hosting them, asking questions. Sometimes it's fun to just answer them. So I'm excited for this. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I guess to answer your first question, love to hear a little bit about your personal sort of journey into golf and how you got started and, maybe where you are today in it.
Yeah, so I came from a golf family. My dad is an avid golfer. He's not, I don't come from I guess I wouldn't call it a ritzy upbringing. I didn't grow up at a country club. I worked at a country club, but I didn't grow up at a country club. We played the public courses in and around our area. My dad and his group of friends, which is such a large group, it was fun. Golf, I got brought up with golf where it's just fun. It wasn't really competitive. I did golf in high school, and to be honest with you, that almost ruined the game for me because I put so much pressure on myself to perform. And I wasn't that great because I was more focused on baseball. And anyone that knows anything about the baseball swing is that sometimes it can really mess up a golf swing. And for me, I almost stopped playing. And it wasn't college till I wasn't competing anymore. And I went to college at the same university as my brother. And we golfed a little bit more. And I kind of got back into the game and I kind of liked it more. And, now it's just something I like to do. It's just something that I treasure every time I can go out and golf. I typically have my own children with me, which I have 5 kids. And it's just something that I enjoy to do. But my upbringing with golf was chipping balls in the backyard at a really young age, and then eventually getting up to the 9-hole course close to our house, and then eventually graduating up to the big boy courses. And some of those courses back in my hometown of Wheeling, West Virginia are really, really brutal. Even to this day, as a 41-year-old male, it can be really, really brutal. But no, I love golf, and it's always been a part of my life as long as I can remember.
That's awesome. Well, and it's really cool to hear that now you kind of have the next generation coming into the game. So how are the kids taking to golf?
So I have, like I said, 5 kids. My oldest is our son, and then everyone else is a girl. So we have 1 boy and 4 girls. And so the oldest, my son, will be 16 in November, and our youngest will be 6 here in a couple weeks. And I never really pushed anyone into the game. When my son was really little, we got him a tiny little putter, and we got him a little wedge. And I would take him to the putting greens, and I would be putting around, and he would be doing the same. That's kind of the extent of it. Then he kind of grew more interested in the game. I wanted them to play, but I wasn't going to force them to play. My daughters actually didn't have any interest in playing until probably, 8 or 9 years old. And then they kind of got the bug. And so they wanted to start coming with dad, and they wanted to go play. And now, because we have so many people that typically want to go, we walk. And that's my preferred method of golfing anyways, is, when you have a golf cart, I could take 2 kids and squeeze them in a golf cart, but I can't take 3. So we're going to carry our bags. We're going to walk. And the more I think about it, that's the way I was raised. I didn't ride in a golf cart really until I was in college, because in high school you carried your bag. Growing up, I carried my bag. And so it's really great. Yeah, it's kind of cyclical. And the next cycle is starting with my kids enjoying the game. I have no aspirations for them to be on the LPGA tour or anything like that. It's just something that they like to do with me. And I was telling my wife the other day, if that's all it is, then hey, I'm a happy man if that's all it is. They like playing golf with their dad. And we get to go out and play 9 holes, 18 holes, doesn't matter. Shoot, give me that until the day I die. That's fine by me.
Nah, and that's one of the incredible things too, thinking, just personally being able to still play golf with my brother and my dad. And,
Yeah.
As my dad gets older, it's like, still gives us that sort of special time, regardless of how we all play. It's family
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah.
So as you've gone through, obviously, raising kids through golf, what advice do you have for others that are maybe sort of thinking about getting their kids into the game? Any learnings?
So again, like I didn't force it on anyone, any of my kids. They just started to kind of get the bug themselves. So I wouldn't say, you can get a club in their hands and take them to a putting green and teach them how to putt the ball and have fun. I think that's the biggest thing. And I have a different background because I was a physical education teacher for 16 years at the middle school level. And if you know anything about school and educating in any way, shape, or form, if the kids aren't having fun, they're not going to want to do it. And so even with my own children, when I taught them the game of golf, fun was always at the forefront. It was on the forefront more than here's how you want your left arm to look as you bring it back, the takeaway, the follow through, all that stuff. I just wanted them to have fun. And so we would do like little games on the putting green. I'd putt with them and see, okay, how many putts does it take you to get in the hole? Of course, I would typically win. They get frustrated, but they still want to do it. They want to beat dad. Now it's, we'll go to the driving range. You have a shot, you have a hole that's like 50 yards away. Who can get closest to that pin? All these little things are ways that keep them engaged. It's fun. Golf is a difficult sport. Everyone knows it's difficult. And so if you were to just go to the driving range and just harp on them about what they need to improve on, and this is how you should do that, and that's wrong, and this isn't right, they're going to hate the game. They're not going to like going. They're not going to enjoy even going and hitting golf balls at the driving range. But when you go and it's, okay, let's see who can get closest to this pin and let's talk a little trash and let's have some fun. Now, the next time you say, hey, do you want to go hit golf balls? They're all going to say, I want to go. And so typically, like when we go to the driving range, I have all 5 kids in tow. We just load up the van with the clubs and the kids and we go and we have a blast. And and I think that's the biggest thing, is just to let them have fun. Once they get the bug and they're interested in the game, that's when you can start to teach them little things about the swing. Okay, the takeaway, like pretend like you're throwing sand behind you, so you get that low sweeping takeaway. And hey, you want to keep your left arm just a little bit straighter. And I would say this too, I'm fortunate enough that I knew enough about the swing that I could kind of help tinker with my kids' swing. If you don't, get them lessons early. Like that would be my biggest tip, is to get them lessons early. If you don't know enough about it, or no one in your family knows enough about it, you don't want them creating bad habits by watching Tiger Woods on TV or Nelly Korda on TV and thinking, oh, that's easy, I'm just going to go duplicate that swing. Well, next thing you know, it's going to be a nightmare, and they're going to be fighting that swing for years. So unless you can do it yourself, get them lessons and then see where the game takes them. But if I think that, again, as a parent, expectations have to be tempered. I'd have no expectations for my kids to compete in this game at all. Not even high school, not junior golf, like none of it. I have no expectations. If they want to go down that road, I'll go down that road with them. But my expectations are just for them to enjoy this game that they could play their entire life. And that's something really special, is that they can still go out. Like my dad is 69 years old. And when he comes to town, or when we go back to my hometown of Wheeling, we golf together. And they find I think that's so cool. Like, what other sport could you do that with a 69-year-old grandfather? Unless you're like bowling or maybe tennis. If my dad used to play baseball. We're not going and playing baseball. We're not playing football with my dad, So I think that's very unique, and the kids see that, and they definitely take to that in a good way.
Yeah, and I think that's important, enjoying the game over anything else. And I think that translates not just to golf, but to just about any sport, as you see kids' sports these days, just instilling that enjoyment in the game and participation.
And parents suck the joy out of it a lot of times. It's actually the parents that are doing this. It's not the kids. It's like baseball. Like, we're going to play travel ball. You're going to play all year. It's like you are literally sucking the life out of this fun activity. And it drives me insane. But that's a soapbox for another time.
I feel like we could have a whole episode on that.
Oh,
yeah, my golf coach too, he got out of teaching junior golf for the most part because of because of the kids, but because of the parents. And the parents would basically be like, no, kid, you just shot an 81, you're going out on the range for the next 3 hours. And into the darkness. Yeah, but I diverge. So I guess as far as getting back into your personal golf game, what's one of the most memorable golf experiences that you've had?
I mean, for me individually, it would be the time it was like one of those days that just everything went right. It was the only time I've shot sub 70 in my life. I shot a 69. It was 1 under par at Moundsville Country Club. And it was actually the day after Thanksgiving in 2015. We have this ritual in our family. Our family, my side of the family, we spend Thanksgiving together every year. And so we are always, our tradition is that we will golf the day after unless it's raining or frigid temperatures. And we had some beautiful weather that year. And I went out and it was really warm for that time period in the northern panhandle of West Virginia. And like I said, I remember number one, which is a really short par four, hit a low liner off the tee, not warmed up, didn't hit any golf balls before we played. Have about 100 so yards in, leave it a little short, drained like a 40-footer for birdie. And after that, I'm thinking either this is a one-off and just had a lucky hole, essentially a lucky putt, or this could be a special round. And it turned out to be a special round. That's probably the most memorable golf thing that's happened to me individually. But I can honestly say that when it comes to memorable, anytime that, and this is very few times in a course of a year, which really does suck. Anytime my brother, my dad, and myself can get together and play as one. And if we throw in a kid or two, like one of my kids, like that's even more special. But anytime that we can get those three people together, that's always special. And it doesn't matter how well we play. We could all suck. We could all shoot 85s and we leave the course saying, oh, well, we had a good time. We don't get to see each other that often all together. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah. No, I love it. As far as favorite golf courses, do you have some favorite courses you've ever played?
You know, it's funny. When I had you on my Fairways and Dreams podcast, you know, you're a very well-traveled guy, and I've had other people on my golf podcast, like Mike Bartels, who's a photographer. I mean, he's played, you name it, he's played it. It's insane. And I was talking to my wife after I had both of you all on my podcast. I'm like, I am probably the least traveled golfer you'll ever meet in your life. I mean, literally. And a lot of it comes back to the fact that when I grew up, where I grew up, we really couldn't afford to go play any like special courses. So we played the courses in our area. Was really fortunate. Robert Trent Jones has a great course that I grew up as my home course in Wheeling. Arnold Palmer put in a design right next to that course. So we have the Palmer and the Jones. Those are the two courses that I grew up playing, and I love them. They're great. They're really, really challenging. Talk about a lot of, you know, undulating fairways because of the hills in West Virginia, and the greens are tough and they're typically lightning fast. But, you know, those are really the only, I played courses in high school, but nothing really noteworthy. I never went up to Oakmont Country Club and got to play Oakmont in Pittsburgh, which was only about an hour away, but still I never got that chance. And so then I moved to Maryland. And again, I find a local country club that we can afford to go to. And it's not a ritzy country club. It's a golfer's country club is what we call it. And I typically just golf there. Why? Because with what I pay a year, I can go and walk 9 holes with my kids. The kids never get charged, and I pay $8. I have 5 kids. Crap is expensive. And so I don't have like the money to go say, I'm just going to go up to Bethpage, you know, and play some of those courses up there. Or I'm going to try and get on it. I know someone that can get me on Congressional down in DC. Like I don't have that. I don't have those connections, nor do I have the money to do that. And so I haven't played any notable courses. And that's a long way of answering your question. I just play the courses that are kind of my home course, and I play them, and that's it. And my dad, I guess, you know, kind of the way I was raised, he does the same thing. I mean, they'll travel around a little bit, but he just typically plays same courses over and over again, and he's happy with that. And so for me, a lot of it is financial. You know, I could travel to New Jersey. And with the Drop Podcast guys on the Golfer Gang Network, they've already been like, Jeff, when are you coming to New Jersey? Because it's not that far. But yeah. I don't have the time, nor do I have the money to be able to afford some of those green fees. Unfortunately, I'm probably the least traveled golfer ever. Maybe that's a podcast idea. I should do that. You know, everyone talks about traveling around. What about the golfers who are the antithesis to that just stay at their local club all the time? That's me.
Well, and that's a great actual idea. You know, thinking through it. I mean, I have plenty of friends that it's the same way. It's, you know, the same course that they grew up playing high school golf on is to this day the same course. And, you know, I think there's nothing wrong with that at all whatsoever.
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
you
even
know,
even locally, some guys will call me up and say, "Hey, Jeff, do you want to go play this course?" And it's not far. And it's like, well, okay, what are the greens fees? Well, it's like $75. Well, why would I pay that when I can go and play 18 at my club for $16? It just doesn't make sense financially. Now, the course, and we talked about this course, I think it was after we recorded. I live in the neighborhood of a Donald Ross course here in Western Maryland, and it's a private club. I've played it several times. It is a beautiful golf course. It is hardly ever played because it's so expensive to join the club. But what a beautiful course. And Donald Ross, I mean, talk about Pinehurst #2. I mean, he designed that as well. Those damn greens that are like postage stamps and they're all mounted, those turtleback greens, they're annoying as hell, but it's a fun course to play. Maybe one day I'll be able to afford to join there. Then that would be my home course.
there you go. Well,
Yeah.
Golfer Gang Network on the up and up here. So, good transition to that side of things.
Yeah.
So, I obviously know what Golfer Gang Network is. I'm a part of it. If you aren't quite familiar, I'm going to do a little plug on golfergang.com. Go check it out. There's a whole list of all the things that we're about to talk about. But better straight from Jeff's mouth, since he's sort of the inspiration behind it all. Tell us a little bit about what it is and how it came about.
So I mentioned that I am a former teacher. So I taught for 16 years and I was always doing stuff on the side to just try to make some money. And obviously, as you can see, if you're watching this, I have a terrible towel behind me. I do cover the Pittsburgh Steelers in the National Football League. And we basically I got an opportunity to help merge a company called Fans for Sports Network. And we cover all sports, individual teams, leagues, etc. Even things like professional wrestling. Like we have podcasts for all of that stuff. And I run the companies, I don't own the companies, but my boss came to me and said, "Hey, Jeff, like, what about expanding? Like, what do you think if we went into like niche markets?" I had just started my golf podcast. And I said, "Well, what's interesting is that since I started this golf podcast, I have met so many people on Instagram, and I don't have a large Instagram following like you do. Like, I only have like 1,400 followers. And I was like, I found all these people that I've asked them, are you a part of like a network or anything like that? And they said, no, they literally just podcast for the love of the game of golf. Like, that's it. And I said, well, why don't we try and get everyone together and we keep adding to it and the network gets larger. The more people in the network, the larger it is, the more revenue you bring in. They can monetize their work. They can use the network to network, meaning getting guests and having different opportunities within the people that are a part of the network. And he said, let's do it. So I started to talk to people. You reached out as well. And we have, I think, now like 18 podcasts on the Golfer Gang Network, and we're continuing to grow, continuing to have discussions with people that have podcasts. But it's also an opportunity for someone that might be listening to this that says, I love golf and I love talking about golf. I wouldn't mind starting my own podcast. Like, we could be a place for you to start a podcast too. It doesn't have to be a pre-established feed. It can be something that you reach out and say, hey, I'd love to try this because I think I'd be good at it. I have some equipment. It doesn't have to be expensive equipment. And we can get you up and running. And I think that for me, golf is such a unique sport, not just because you can play it until you're 90, but because it never ends. The golf season never ends. Like the PGA Tour, if you want to talk about that, goes from January all the way through December. It just never really stops. And so there's always something to talk about. There's always new technology. There's golf trips that you might be going on. There's new courses being built. And so it does lend itself to a unique blend of podcasting, topics, and audience. And so I've been very happy with the Golfer Gang Network. We are young, still small. We are growing, and that's a positive. But no, I think that there's nothing out there like it. I'll say that, like Fans for Sports Network is one of many sports networks in terms of the major sports, NHL, MLB, NBA, NFL. There's really right now that I've noticed there's only one Golfer Gang Network, all these golf podcasts together. And so that makes us very unique. I'm glad that you're on the ground floor of it. And I think the big things are ahead. It's just a matter of getting everyone on board and getting us growing. We're already doing that. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's been incredibly helpful to me. Just, unfortunately, you've had to be the person receiving my dumb questions, occasionally as I'm like trying to figure certain things out and understand all the opportunities within podcasting and things like that. So,
absolutely.
Fairways and Dreams, talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get back into some other.
I
Golfer
quickly
Gang.
realized with the guests that I've had on my show that the name Fairways and Dreams, if you see the logo, it kind of looks like neon letters. And Scott, I believe you're probably about my age. Like you should, hopefully you get the movie reference, right? Of Fairways and Dreams. Like you get the Cocktails, Tom Cruise, 80s movie.
I was
Yes.
thinking it was cocktails, but
Yes.
or
Thanks.
cocktail, but I wasn't 100% sure. So yeah.
No, okay, Cocktails and Dreams Flanagan.
Yeah.
So I like that mix. And so the guy that did my logo for me, I gave him the Cocktails and Dreams logo from the movie, and he just kind of put the golf background, and I love it. And Fairways and Dreams, like when I started that, it was just the fact that we didn't have a golf podcast on the network at the time, and now we don't have any because they've all become part of the Golfer Gang network. But I was like, you know what? Like, I just like to talk about golf. My dad and I would talk like when we're together, and we would just be talking and talking about whether it's the latest equipment that's out and how it's a bunch of BS. Like, oh my gosh, the Stealth 2 is just a duplicate of this club and the Sim. What are we paying for? Like, they're just changing the colors and marketing. And I was like, hell, that could be a podcast. Or we're talking about, is Tiger Woods ever going to win a tournament again? And that could be a podcast. And so finally I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it. And I started off and I didn't really know which direction I was going to go in. And I've slowly found myself finding my groove. I love having guests on my show. Obviously, you were one of them. And I love to talk to them about their origin stories. And I love to ask them off the wall questions in the rapid fire segment. And I like to just learn about it. It's just fun. But then that's on Tuesdays. But on Thursdays is when I get to give my take on anything golf related. I give updated gambling odds for those that like to maybe wager on golf for the upcoming PGA tournament. So for a major like the US Open last week, I mean, man, talk about odds and all this stuff that happened with Scotty Scheffler being under plus 300, which is insane. But still, like that's the kind of where I found my groove is the Tuesday show. I call it the 2-man scramble where I have a guest. Thursday is just me by myself. And it's fun. 2 days a week, not too stressful. It means I'm just doing a lot of podcasts now across all platforms, but still, I love my golf podcast. It's small and it's growing, but ultimately, I just love the game and I love talking about it. So it seems to fit.
Yeah, no, that's a great podcast to listen to. I do like that mix up of sort of like the Tuesday 2-man scramble and then the Thursday sort of like hot takes on issues in the game of golf. And it's a great combo. So golfergang.com, you can find it. I'll also drop a link directly to like your Spotify or
yeah, sure, I appreciate it.
Podcast page. So with Golfer Gang Network, aside from obviously your podcast, my podcast, do you want to maybe highlight a couple others that are maybe just getting started or some other ones that might be of interest to listeners?
So we have some great podcasts. Some of them are regional. So you have guys like the Drop podcast, which is golfing in the Garden State, which clearly is all about golf in New Jersey. They will talk about the latest news in golf and the PGA Tour, but they do a great job of getting guests that are somehow connected to that state. Like they've had Jim Nance. Jim Nance is from New Jersey. They were able to get him on. They've had Dottie Pepper most recently, after the PGA Championship. She joined their show. It's a great podcast. That's a great show. They get a lot of really good guests. We have the Break 80 group. They're based out of Minnesota, so they talk a lot about Minnesota golf. They're more talking about all things golf. Like they travel a good bit. There's 3 guys. That's a lot of fun. That's a great listen. They had a really good podcast a couple weeks ago, which is not time sensitive at all. It's with Bob Parsons of PXG, and they got to sit down with him and interview him. It was a really interesting, eye-opening podcast in a lot of ways. But then we have some your podcast is growing, and we have like the Upstate New York guys. That's another group where you're talking about obviously Upstate New York golf, and that's regional, and they talk about their courses, and they play the Cape all the time, and they talk about it. And we have the Pitch, Putt, and Puff podcast with Roger, who's kind of up there with the Upstate New York guys. We have new podcasts coming, like Welcome to Puttsville, which is Buck and the Salty Golfer, which they're based in Myrtle Beach. They talk about all golfing in the Grand Strand down there in Myrtle Beach, which is way more than just Myrtle Beach, by the way. Actually, the Grand Strand goes all the way into North Carolina. And I'm also excited that Lauren Cupp, who is one of the premier female speed golfers in the world, is starting a podcast with us at the Golfer Gang Network. She's just getting that off the ground. We're getting all set up. So yeah, like we're starting to kind of grow. And anytime, if anyone's listening to this and like, well, Jeff, you just spewed a lot of different things at me. golfergang.com is the landing page. So if you go to golfergang.com, you'll have all of our podcasts. The Bumbling Golfer is one that I forgot. He's out of the right outside of Philadelphia. Leave the Pin podcast with Dan. Great podcast. And you can see all of them right there. You get the players, you get links to social media, all of it. So it's a great landing page. When we created it, they were like, what do you want it to look like? I just said, I want something very easy to remember, golfergang.com, that everyone can go to and they can get all of the content that they would ever want right there. So your podcast is there. My podcast is there. The Drop podcast, the Break 80 guys, all of them are right there. So yeah, like I said, we're growing and I love the direction that we're headed.
Yeah. Well, and to that sort of follow-on question, like where do you see the bigger picture, like next couple of years, where do you see Golfer Gang Network going?
Well, I think that we have a lot of opportunity within the golf space. You know, people want to compare what we're trying to do like Barstool Sports. It's really not. Barstool Sports is unique and they have like one golf podcast. It's the Foreplay podcast. And then they have Spit and Chicklets is their NHL podcast. I'm trying to just create all these golf podcasts and a home for them. And so my goal would be to just let's see how big we can make this thing. Let's see how many podcasts we can get on board. And not only is it a way for us to make money, because ultimately, if you're going to spend time on this project, that's my ultimate premise here. If you're going to be spending time on doing this, why not make some money while you're doing it? And so not only would we make more money, I see a lot of really good opportunities for advertising to be able to come in and maybe you even talk about sponsorships where if we get large enough, a company might say, we'd love to get all of your people on board with whatever equipment they're trying to push. And I'm talking, I think of a long-term vision for me is maybe even like a branded YouTube channel. We're talking about some more video content. We're also talking about the audio side, merch, like all of it. Like that's to me where we're going. In terms of end game, I don't think there is an end game. It's just you build it the way that you want to build it. We have a good foundation. I think it's now just time to build on top of that.
Yeah. So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, hey, I run a golf apparel company or I run a golf equipment company and and they're interested in getting on board, how do they get in touch?
So if you go to golfergang.com and go down to the bottom, it'll give us an option to actually fill out a form that basically you fill it out. You say, hey, I'm with Titleist and I'd be interested in talking to you about whether it's advertising or sponsorships or whatever. And then you say, I'm not a robot. And then you click send. I actually get those. I actually get all those queries. So if it's the same with if someone's listening to this and was be interested in joining the network and they want to start a podcast, same thing. Go to golfergang.com, scroll to the bottom, and it says, do you want to join the gang? And you fill out that form, and then I will be in contact with you as it pertains to, hey, like, what are you thinking? Do you have a feed already? Do you not have a feed? You want to start a feed? Here's what I would need. And we would start that conversation. So same, advertisers would be the same thing. We have had a couple companies reach out and talk about some affiliate like programs, and we're still talking with them, but nonetheless, that's how they found us. So just go to golfergang.com. Everything should be in one spot. And if it's not, then I didn't do my job.
So again, golfergang.com.
Yes.
So I was going to put that plug in too for, if other people want to get on board, but then that also leads to the question. I mean, you've started several of your own podcasts and helped people like me, and I don't even know how many dozens or hundreds of others start podcasts. What is the best piece of advice? Because I know for me, it was one of those things where I struggled to sort of get over that starting line. What advice do you have for people that are thinking about getting started, especially to like, I consider myself fairly technical, but like, especially some of the other people that might not know the tools and all that kind of stuff.
So you have to understand, like for me, there's two things that really do help you grow. And if you're starting a podcast, it's going to take time. Like, it is going to take years to develop an audience. And so two things are going to keep an audience coming back. Number one is quality. So if it's visual, you got to have good visuals. And so maybe it's, there's a lot of different services out there. I think you use Riverside, we use StreamYard. They're basically one and the same. They just are different companies. And it's really easy to set up shows, to invite guests, to record, to rip those recordings off for MP3 format. There's easy to add in music. All that stuff is super simple now. So that that part of it is easy, whereas 10 years ago it was anything but easy. But you want to have a decent microphone. You can get a decent microphone for under $100. And so get that microphone. It could be a USB, plug it right into your computer, and it's going to sound good. So quality is number one. And number two is consistency. You have to be consistent. If you're setting the bar at one show a week, that's fine, but have one show a week. You're going on vacation, record 2 shows in a week, and then schedule it for the next week so that when you're on vacation, you don't have to worry about recording, carting your microphone all over the place like I do whenever I travel. But still, do that so that your fans and your audience will learn, I'm going to get this show on this day, no matter what. That's going to be really, really important. So in my other realm, my much larger realm of my Steelers coverage, I do a show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning. Just me talking to the microphone. Sometimes I have guests on. And I don't think I've ever, since I started that Monday, Wednesday, Friday show, I just knocked on wood. I've never missed a show, ever. I've done them live in Wheeling. I've done them at the beach. I've done them everywhere. And it's because I'm very dedicated to being consistent. The one thing that everyone hates is when they really like a podcast and they have no idea when the next one's coming. So how am I going to listen to your podcast? And I'm going to always check Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Is there a new show yet? Is there a new show yet? No, like, you have to be consistent so that they know it's Wednesday. This is when the show drops. It's every Wednesday. So they tune in every Wednesday, becomes part of their weekly schedule. It's habitual. And next thing you know, they're just going to start listening more and more. And so the audience will start growing. You might start off with 25 people that listen, but if those 25 people stay and then it grows to 30 and then it goes to 35, that's that steady growth. Quality, consistency, the best 2 things I could tell someone that's just trying to get started in this game. But it's a saturated market. It takes a long time.
Well, and to kind of follow up on that too, getting started, if somebody doesn't necessarily have the technical background, and it does take that building time. Like, I even have, a social audience, but then like getting somebody to go from Instagram where they're click, 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 flip, 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 to sitting and listening to a 35-minute podcast or, watching the YouTube interview, that's a different beast in and of itself too.
Yeah.
But then getting started, like, aside from the microphone and the Riverside stuff, like, do people need to really invest a ton of money up front in order to get off the ground, do you think?
No. And like, that's one of the benefits of the Golfer Gang Network is it costs you nothing. You don't owe us anything. Like, we're willing to get you started for free. And so as long as you can provide the content and the quality and the consistency, well, let us take care of the rest. And it does suck because because it is such a saturated market, you have to be a selfless and shameless promoter of your own content. You might have, and I think, Scott, you have like 60,000 followers on Instagram, which is incredible. Like, that's awesome. Well, how do I get that number of people, even half of that, to try and listen to a podcast that I just started? It's difficult. You got to share clips. You have to promote links. You have to remind people like, hey, check out this, check out that. And sometimes you do feel like a salesman, like I'm trying to sell a used car. But ultimately, you're just trying to give them a chance. And I've always told people, whenever I'm helping them start a podcast, is like, look, you are a storefront. If you're lucky enough to get that customer to come into your store, how do you keep them in the store? And then how do you have them come back to the store? That's the importance. It's the importance of a good start to the show, a good, having good music at the beginning, something that's catchy, that's not going to make them listen for 5 seconds, say, yep, I'm done. Or how is the content so riveting in the first 5 minutes that they're like, well, I'm going to listen to all of it. I'm going to enjoy it so much. I'm going to go back and check out the rest of his catalog too. Those are the challenges. So yeah, man, when I explain it, it sounds really daunting. It really is. Let me put it this way. If it's fun for you, it'll come off as fun for the audience. So if you're enjoying it, if it becomes a job and a chore, people will know it and they'll hear it and they'll feel it when they listen to your content or watch your content. So it's got to be fun. And I can tell you that, all the podcasts that I do a podcast basically every day of the week, and I still have fun doing it. I still love it. And it's because I grew up listening to the Dan Patricks and the Colin Cowherd before he went off the deep end, Christopher Mad Dog Russo, who are guys that just talked in front of a microphone for 3 hours. And I said I could do that. give me a microphone, give me a damn mic, I'll do it. And I basically started, and I had to start somewhere and made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I've learned from it. Now I want to help others get better and to grow. And, just because you're a fan doesn't mean you can't have a voice. Just because you're just a casual golfer and you've never played collegiately, or you're not a scratch golfer, who the hell cares? You can still have an opinion, and you can have your own opinion. We're all entitled to that. So why not put it out there for the world to hear?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the biggest thing is just get started, and it actually gets so much easier once you just record that first one and then you get the second one, and then it's like, okay, it gets easier and easier as you get over that first hurdle. So yeah. All right. So closing, final couple questions for you.
Sure.
Well, we are recording this as the U.S. Open is underway before it gets released, so transparency there for people listening. There is a little bit of golf underway already, so it might skew. We're already into day 2 here. But who's your call for the U.S. Open? Who do you think is going to take Pinehurst?
I don't know. Like, as we're recording this right now, like, I was keeping track of the feature group in the morning, which is Rory, Xander, and Scotty. And, Rory, I think he bogeyed a hole when he was 1 back of Patrick Cantlay. Patrick Cantlay at the time of this recording is 5 under. Rory is 4. Rory looks really good. But I can see, and by the time this run airs, I could be completely wrong, but I could see the field coming back to level. And when I say level, it's even par. So a lot of people like Scotty Scheffler, again, at the time that we're recording this, was 1 over par. And everyone's like, man, what's wrong with Scotty? Like, just keep yourself in it, and then see what happens with these afternoons when it's going to get 90 some degrees. That course is going to really firm up. You're talking about holding the green is going to feel almost impossible. Bigger scores, bigger numbers could come in. And so I could see Rory winning. He's been consistent this year. I'm not a Rory McIlroy fan, but that has everything to do with the Ryder Cup. I am very much an American, and I despise the Europeans. And so Rory has been a thorn in our side for I don't know how many years. So I definitely have a disdain towards Rory McIlroy, but I could see him actually winning. It's not Augusta, so he has a really good chance.
Yeah. Well, and you've played Donald Ross courses, even if you haven't played Pinehurst. Like, you understand how those undulating greens can just wreak havoc. And if they speed those things up, it could just be complete and utter carnage.
They're going to speed up when it firms up anyways. Like, that's what's crazy. Like, holding a green is going to be really difficult for those guys playing in the afternoons when everything is just dried up, and so it's going to be challenging. And I like that. I like a major. I don't want a 21 under winning a major like we had at Valhalla with the PGA Championship. I want it to be a challenge. I don't mind a 2 under score winning a U.S. Open. Like, that means that these guys had to work their tails off to win it. I'm okay with that. Bryson DeChambeau, by the way, don't rule him out. He's creative enough.
Yeah. No, and he was sort of making a pretty good run yesterday afternoon. And so who is your favorite golfer? Do you have a favorite PGA?
All time or right now?
We'll do both. Right now and
so all time, and this is going to go back to my dad because it was his favorite golfer, was Freddie Couples. By far. Fred Couples was our favorite. We used to go to the Firestone Country Club, the NEC of golf in Akron, Ohio. My uncle would get us tickets as a kid. We used to go. We would follow Freddie every time we went up there. He was so gracious. He was such a nice guy. What a beautiful golf swing, just effortless. Was never a Tiger Woods fan, so I've just kept on following Freddie. And then when Freddie stopped and went to the Champions Tour, I really didn't have a guy that I kind of clung to. I really do like Scotty Scheffler. Like, I can honestly say that. My brother, I laughed at him. I talked to him yesterday, and he goes, "I'm just glad Scheffler's not in the top leader." But I'm like, "Why?" He says, "I'm just sick of seeing him winning. It's annoying." I just like the way Scotty goes about his business. There's no flair, and a lot of people don't like that. He's having a dominant 2024, a Tiger-esque year, and you would never know it. He just seems like the most down-to-earth guy. I love the way he plays, and I would say Scotty Scheffler is my favorite right now. But all time, by far, hands down, Fred Couples.
Awesome. All right. Well, that wraps up today's episode for the most part. But any final thoughts or anything we missed on?
No, I mean, if you want to check out my podcast, you can just go to anywhere you get your podcast, search Fairways, the and symbol, Dreams, Fairways and Dreams. obviously Apple Podcast, Spotify. You can find it there relatively easy. So again, Tuesdays and Thursdays, those drop. If you care to follow me on social media, you can. On Instagram, it's @thegolf_life. On Twitter and X, you'll see a lot of Steelers coverage and NFL stuff there, but it's @jhartman, HARTMAN_PIT. I also do tweet about golf though, so that you will get some of that. But yeah, check it out. And I don't think you'll regret it. I do enjoy that golf podcast. It's a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, and I'll drop those links in the description as well, so you can always click down in the description. Well, thank you for coming on, Jeff. Enjoy the week, and check out golfergang.com to follow Jeff's podcast, my podcast, and a lot of other golf-related podcasts. And we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Jeff. It was great to have him on and talk all things podcasting and Golfer Gang Network. If you enjoyed today's episode, I know we touched on Pinehurst at the tail end, and also want to refer you back. If you look a couple episodes back, you'll find an interview that I had with Matt Minder, the head of Amateur Players Tour. Take a listen to that episode. We talk a lot of things Pinehurst there, as well as if you go back a couple more episodes, we actually did a whole feature on Donald Ross, who was the designer of Pinehurst, and his background, as well as we do a whole feature on Pinehurst. So be sure to go back, listen to those episodes, and if you have any ideas about future topics for us to cover, or if you'd love to be a guest on an episode of A Good Walk Spoiled, feel free to shoot me a DM at @pony_golf on Instagram, or you can also find my links in my link tree, which is also in the description, which includes a link to my website, which is pony.golf, just pony.golf. So that's the actual domain. It's a .golf domain. So pony.golf, you can contact me through that form there. And always open to new partnerships, new discussions with folks. So ping me, and thanks for being a listener of A Good Walk Spoiled. That concludes today's episode of A Good Walk Spoiled, Adventures in Golf, hosted by Scott Ponywise. That's myself. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, rate it high, and follow us on Instagram at @pony_golf to stay in the loop. We'll catch you next time.